issues with. Okay, so now the recording has started. Okay, so we are already like almost 8 minutes into the class, 7 minutes into the class. The recording had stopped. The last 7 minutes we did not really. I just showed you what these tables are having. So in case if your recording is going to start from this moment, right? Don't worry, we do not miss anything much. Okay, I'm just getting started with subquery. I hope this recording will be fine. Okay, so can you please send table script? Okay, so many people want the table script. So let's do one thing. I'm going to share my table script in Telegram. Okay, so Telegram. I'll just share it right away. Whoever wants to take it, you take it from Telegram, and um, you can then, if you want, you can use it. Okay, so let me go ahead here. There were 45 messages. Okay, I did not see the messages. Um, Data set. So this is this one. It's just one file. Okay, it's a common file for all the database. Painting data set for all DBMS. Okay, so I have shared. You can take it from there. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, so every definition that you give, most of you guys, the definition is correct. A query inside a query in the most simplest of terms, right? Whenever you see an SQL query, and if that SQL query has some other SQL query within it, then you can say that we are using subquery in this particular SQL statement. Okay, so generally there are, I think there are three types of subqueries. Okay, so we have something called as, okay, types of subquery. Okay, so we have something called as scalar subquery. Okay, scalar subquery, and then we have multi-row subquery. Okay, and then we have something called as correlated subquery. Okay, now now under this multi-row subquery, again there are two types. Okay, so we have what is that? Okay, I'll come to that later. So now, what exactly is a scalar subquery? Okay, I'm just going to spend 5 minutes explaining you the concept, and then we'll start writing SQL queries where it will be more clear. Okay, now scalar subquery, basically, as the name suggests, it's basically if you're using a subquery which is going to return just one row and one column, then that subquery is called as a scalar subquery. Okay, so you can tell it like returns one row and one column. That's it. Okay, so this is what a scalar subquery is. Now when it comes to multi-row subquery, there are two types of multi-row subquery. Okay, so it returns multiple rows and one column. Okay, and then there is a second type which returns multiple rows again and multiple columns. Okay, so this is the second type of multi-row subquery. Okay, so just this statement itself you should be able to understand what it means, right? So if your subquery returns one row one column, it's a scalar subquery. If your subquery returns multiple rows, then it is a multi-row subquery. But inside multi-row subquery, again there are two types. If your subquery returns multiple columns as well, then this is the second type here, and if it returns only one column, it's a first type here. Okay, now the last type of subquery that we generally have is called as correlated subquery. It's a subquery which depends on the outer query. Okay, now before I can tell, I would also like to tell that subquery is also subquery is a query inside query. Okay, this is a definition. Okay, also referred to as inner query. Okay, so because when I'm explaining, I might sometimes tell it like inner query, sometimes call it like subquery. They both mean the same. Okay, so what happens is you have a query inside a query. So the inside query is called as a subquery or an inner query, and the outer query, the main query, is basically called as an outer query. Okay, or main query. Okay, so correlated subquery is something where your subquery is dependent on the outer query. Okay, so this is basically the most simplest of concepts. I'll just keep it like this so that I can share this note with you. Okay, now of course you can get all of this definition in Google, but our main focus is to understand the concept, right? So let's try to understand the concept one by one, and I'm going to start with some SQL queries. So let's copy some of the questions that I have. Okay, so let's try to understand, let's try to solve a particular problem and see which particular type of subquery we would need to use to solve this problem. Okay, so my first question is, I have, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste this here. Okay, so we have these four tables, and let's say I have a requirement where I was told to fetch the paintings that are priced higher than the average painting price. Okay, so I need to fetch only those paintings whose price is higher than the average painting price. Okay. Now, when you look at this question, there are basically two different things. Okay. It's always better whenever you come across an SQL query, whether in interviews or working on a project or something, right? If you can split the query into multiple different parts, then it becomes easier for you to understand and solve. Okay. When I look at this problem statement, I can see that I need to find only those paintings. So meaning that I need to find some paintings. So my select from and where, whatever I have, I know that in my from clause, I need to use paintings. Okay, I have the paintings table here. Okay, and why I need to use painting? Because my ultimate goal is to fetch paintings, right? So the table that I finally need to use to display the result should basically come. The data should come from the paintings table. Okay, that's fine. But which paintings should I display? That's the next question, right? Because I need to only display those paintings that whose price is higher than the average painting price. Okay, so looks like there is some price. So if I go into my paintings table, I need to, so I have this price here. Okay, so I need to only fetch those paintings. So I need to say my listed price is higher than, so higher than means it's greater than the average painting price. Okay, so somewhere I need to find the average painting price, and whatever value I get here, I need to use it in this filter because I need to only fetch those paintings whose price is higher than this average price. Okay, and then here I can do a select star, so telling that I need to display all such paintings. Okay, now this is going to be my main query, but here I need to do basically write a query to find this average painting price. Right now, one way or manually of doing that is I can manually see try to find what is the average of all of these values, and then I can hard code that value here. Okay, so let's say if my average of all of this, so let's say I'll try to find the average painting price. I'll write it here. So in order to find the average of any value, I told you we can use aggregate function. So I can just tell average of listed price, okay, from paintings, right? And if I run this, I'll get 1587.5. So what I can do here is I can put that value here. So I can just tell 1587.5, right? And now you can run this and I'm getting the output. Okay, so this kind of is the correct output for this particular query. Okay, why? Because I have got the average price here. Okay, and that average price I have compared it with the listed price from the paintings table, and I have only returned those records. So I'm getting only 3 paintings because in my paintings table I totally have 8 paintings, but there are only 3 paintings whose price is greater than the average price. Okay, and I have done this like this, but this is of course not the right way of doing this. Why? Because here I have hard coded this value. Tomorrow, now there are only 8 paintings. Tomorrow, if 100 more paintings are added, then will I go and every time calculate the average price myself? It's not possible, right? When you're working on a real time project, you cannot be updating your code every time there is a new data, right? So we need to make it more dynamic. How do we do that? So instead of hard coding this value here, I can basically put this entire query here, right? Because I know that whatever value I hard coded, I was anyways taking it from this query itself. So I can just put this entire query here. Okay. And now if I run this, so let's say Now if I run this, I'm still getting the same output, right? Now this is the correct solution for this, and this is basically what is called as a subquery. Okay, because this is one SQL statement. It's one statement. Okay, but inside this one SQL statement, there are two SQL queries. There are two select queries. Okay, this select query that is inside here is basically called as a subquery, or you can also call it like an inner query. And this query here, that is on the basically your main query, is basically called either a main query or an outer query. Okay, and the type of subquery that we have used here, okay, can anyone tell me what is this type of subquery called? I Okay, so it's a scalar subquery, and we don't need to give an alias here because this is basically so whenever you are giving us using a subquery in the from clause, okay, in that case alias is mandatory in PostgreSQL only. Okay, but here this is not a from clause. This is just a value. Okay, it's not inside the from clause, so you don't need to give an alias here. Okay, so yes, this is a scalar subquery, and I hope this is clear, right? We will be seeing many such. I'm going to be coming up with maybe around 20 interview queries from basic to intermediate SQL queries, and I will try to include all of these examples. Okay, so I hope this scalar subquery is clear. Any questions about this subquery? Okay, so Swati tells, won't it be executed for each record check? Okay, now let's try to understand how the execution actually happens. Okay, when I execute this query internally, you know what happens? First of all, okay, now before I even go into this, I want to clarify one of the mistakes that I did in my previous class, and I think it was brought to me in yesterday's class by, let me see, I wrote this question. It was okay. I did not write his or her name. I don't know who asked this, but the order of execution. Okay. Now I'll come to I'll tell you how the execution in for this particular query happens. But before that, I want to tell one important thing here. I want to correct myself. That is order of execution in SQL. Okay. So we have something called as select. What are the different clauses that we use in SQL? So in a select query, so we have select, we have from, then we can also have join, then we can have where, and then after where we can have group by, then we can have having, and then we can have order by, and then finally we can have limit, right? So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, these are the 8 type of clauses, main clauses that we can use in a select query, correct? Okay, union and all of those things, then that is not part of select, that is outside select, right? Mainly in your select we have only these 8. Okay, now what is the order of operation? The first thing that gets executed when your query gets executed by the, okay, so let's, the first thing that gets executed when you run a query is it's your from clause. Okay, because SQL needs to know which table the SQL needs to consider to fetch the data, to filter the data, or to do any operation, right? So this is number one. The first thing SQL will do is it will go and look into the from clause. Okay, the second thing SQL will do is it will see is there only one table or are there multiple tables. If there are multiple tables, then it will be mentioned in the join. So this is the second thing that SQL will check. Okay, what's the third thing? Once the tables are taken, once the join conditions are followed, the next thing is, are there any filter condition? Because SQL only wants to take the data that is actually required, right? So this is the third clause that SQL will look into. Okay, and the fourth thing is basically going to be group by. Previously I told you it was going to be select, but actually it's not select. Okay, it's going to be group by, because select is something, it will display the data, or your output is going to be returned from select, right? Where for display purpose or whatever it is, right? But even before the output is selected in select, first it needs to know what is the data it needs to get selected, because as soon as you do a group by, your whatever data is returned from your from, join, and where, and after that if you're using a group by, the entire data can get changed, right? Because group by will reduce the number of records. Okay, so this is actually the fourth when it comes to the sequence of operation. Of course, after group by, if you're having clause, you will again filter the data based on the grouped data. So this is having the operation 5. Okay, and after this, once all of this is done, then comes your select clause. Okay, that is, this is the sixth thing that SQL will check. Okay, so this is where all the data that is required has been taken, it has been modified as per the return query. Finally, the data that needs to be displayed is selected from the select clause. And then finally, once the data is all selected, if you want to sort the data in a specific order, this is where order by comes in. So that is having the sequence operation 7. Okay, and finally the last thing that happens is limit. Okay, so this is basically the order of execution in SQL. I don't know who asked about this or who tried to correct me about this, but this is the proper order of execution. So is it clear? And this makes sense, right? Because we have understood these 8 clauses, and it makes sense why this is the way SQL looks at your query. Okay, no matter what type of query you write, this is how SQL is going to scan your query one by one. Okay, I hope this is clear. Now let's go back to the question of, I think Swati asked. Um, what did Swati ask? I think, will it execute for each record? Something like that, right? Um, okay, so Akhil's question also I will answer. He's telling there are multiple rows. Why is it a scalar subquery? So I'll come to that. Now let's look at this particular query. When you execute this query, internally, what is SQL doing? First of all, as soon as you execute the query, it is going to look at the from clause, right? So it comes to know that you're using the paintings table, right? So it has to go to the paintings table. And then in the paintings table, it knows that there is a filter condition here. So it does not have to fetch every record from painting. It only has to fetch those records from painting, which is going to satisfy this filter condition. Okay. But when SQL looks at this filter condition, it comes to know that, oh, here is not actually using a value, but here is actually using another SQL query. Okay, so looks like he's using a subquery. So this is what SQL is thinking, right? So then it comes to know that, then it tries to see what type of subquery are you using here. Okay, if we were using a correlated subquery, then the way execution will happen will be completely different. But in this particular case, it's not a correlated subquery, it's a scalar subquery. What did I say by scalar subquery? Scalar subquery is something that returns one row and one column, right? Now if I go and execute this subquery here, you can see that it's just returning one column and it's just returning one row. Okay, why? And it's always going to, even if I insert millions of records into the painting table, this average of listed price will always return one column and one row. Why? Because it's taking the average of the entire table records for this particular column. Okay, this is why it is scalar. Do not consider, when I say scalar subquery, do not consider the result from this entire query. You only need to consider the result from the subquery itself. Okay, so this subquery is a scalar subquery. Okay, one row, one column, that's what is getting displayed. Okay, so when SQL sees that you are having a scalar subquery, the first thing that it will execute is this scalar subquery itself. So whatever is returned or whatever output is coming from this scalar subquery, it's going to hold on to that value and it's going to use this value to apply for this filter condition. Okay, so even before SQL is going to execute the main query, first it will execute this inner query or the subquery. Whatever data is returned from here, it will use this data to filter this entire where clause. Okay, and once this filter is happened, it will automatically reduce the number of records which is going to satisfy this filter condition, and then finally the outer query will be executed and then you will get these 3 records. Okay, so in a scalar subquery, whenever you are having a scalar subquery, the scalar subquery gets executed first. The output of the scalar subquery will then be used to filter the data in your main query. Okay, so in this case, this scalar subquery gets executed only once. Okay, and the outer query also will only get executed only once. Okay, so is it clear? Any confusion? Let me know if any confusion. Okay. Okay, so it's clear for everyone. Then let's move on to the next one. Okay, so scalar subquery is clear. Let me take a next question. Okay, so the second question that I have is, okay, so Harsha's question here. So Harsha has given a query here like this. So do you think this will work or this will not work? Okay, but oh, you're using a having clause here. I think this will still not work. Can you tell me why it will not work? What is the reason it will not work? Anyone can guess why this query will not work? No group by. Okay, can't compare aggregate function like this. Okay, need to use group by. Okay, nowhere. Okay, now I think in not in the class in the previous class we saw that we can use having without using group by, without using where clause. It works, but there is a rule. The rule is, if you're using having, it only needs to have the aggregate functions only. But here you see, this is not an aggregate function. This is basically a proper column. Okay, and this is an aggregate function, right? So I could come instead of this column, if I had some value like 5,000 or some hard-coded value, then maybe yes. Okay, but this is like you're using some column and then you're using aggregate function. This should probably not work. Okay, let's see. So it's not working. Relation does not exist. Okay, this is a table name typo. Let's fix that, and now let's run this. So column listed price does not exist. Listing price. Okay, so now let's execute this. And now I think it's giving the proper error. Column painting.id must appear in the group by clause or be used in the aggregate function. Okay, so this error message is very clear. So either you use a group by clause or you make sure that you're always using an aggregate function. Don't mix aggregate function with a proper column when you're only using having. Okay, so this syntax itself is wrong. Okay, so I'll tell wrong syntax. Okay. Okay, fine. So let's move on to the next question. What's the time? Okay, already half an hour done. So let's move on to the second one. The second question that I have is, fetch all collectors who purchased paintings, right? So where is my collectors table? So I have my collectors table and I see that I have 4 collectors. Okay. Now I need to write a query which is going to display all the collectors who have purchased paintings. Okay. So these are all the collectors that I have in my database. And then if I go to my sales table, I can see that there are 8 sales that have happened, and for each of the painting you can see this is a painting id. Who is a collector, I can see it from here. So I can see that there is 104, 102, 103. So these are the 3 collectors IDs that I see here. But in my collectors table, I can see that I have 101, 102, 103, and 104, right? So there are 4 collectors, but looks like only 3 collectors have actually done some purchase, right? So what I want to do is I want to find the collectors who purchased painting. So I want to only display those collectors who have done some purchase, right? So ideally my output should be only 104, 102, and 103 along with their names. Okay, so how do I write a query for this? Now there are a few different ways we can write this query. One of the easiest way of writing this query would be by using a multi-row subquery. Okay, so for example, again let's split this query into 2 different parts. I need to find all the collectors, so I can just tell I need select from where. Okay, which is a table that I need the collectors table. Okay, that's fine, right? Because at the end I want to display the data from collectors table, their name and their id maybe. Okay, but I only need to display those collectors who have done some purchase. Okay, how do I know who has done some purchase? By going into the sales table, right? So what I can do here is, in the sales table, if I wanted to know who have done all the purchase, I can say that select collector id from sales, right? So if I execute this, this is where I will get all the collector ids, right? So if I only choose these collector ids and then I put that filter here, okay, saying that where id in this list, okay, this entire list, okay, then I should basically get my collector information. So instead of hard coding each of these values here, what I can do is I can just copy this query and I can put it here. Okay, so this will fetch me all the collector IDs who basically have done some sales, and then I'm comparing that with the ID column from the collectors table, and then here let's say I'm going to display all the collectors. Now if I run this, now you can see I'm getting only the three collectors who have done some purchase. Okay, now this is one way of writing this query, and this sub here also I have used a subquery. Why? Because this is one statement, but inside this statement there are two select queries, right? And the inner query here or the subquery here is what type of subquery is it? Because if I execute that subquery, you can see that I'm having only one column, but it is multiple rows, right? So this falls under this category, that is multiple rows and one column. So this is the multi-row subquery, right? So this is how we have executed this. But there is one more way of executing this query or solving this query. Can anyone tell me what would be another way of solving this query? Anyone? Joins? Okay, perfect. So everyone already said the another way of solving this same query is by using joins. Okay, so what I can do is, again, I can copy this same thing. Okay, select star from collectors and I'll give an alias C. Instead of using this subquery, I will directly join with the sales table. So I can just tell join sales yes. And what is my join condition here? I can just tell yes dot collector ID equal to C dot ID. Okay, and then here I'll just display all the columns from this C table, right? And now if I execute this, I'm getting multiple records. Why am I getting multiple records? Okay, I'm getting multiple records. It's because some of these collectors have done multiple, they have purchased multiple paintings, right? Because I think this Christina with ID 103, she has purchased three paintings. Laura has purchased two paintings, and etc. Okay, how do I fix that? Okay, distinct. So I can just say distinct of C dot star, and now you'll see that I'll get only three collectors who have done the paintings. Okay, so both these queries are correct. Okay, in the first case I'm using a subquery. In the second case I'm using a join. Okay, so okay, is this clear? Multi-row subquery. Any confusions about this? In the first case, we don't need to use distinct. Why? Because in my in clause, right, wherever I'm using my in clause, even if I give multiple duplicate values, it does not matter. SQL will only treat one unique value at a time. Okay. So which approach is recommended? Good question from Shiva. In this particular case, the better approach would be to use joins. Okay, the simple reason for that is this is just one select statement, right? But here you are doing two different select statements, so SQL has to execute this separately and then it will execute this. So two different times SQL has to execute, but this SQL will just execute it once because it's just a simple join. Okay, so in this particular case joins is better, but this was just an example for showing how what is a multi-row subquery. Okay, um, okay, but this is a very small query. You might think it does not really make much difference in the performance, but when you're using a very big table, and let's say your inner query here or a subquery was having 1 million records, then this joins will be way much better. Okay, okay, so let's move on to the third query for today, and I'm going to be using this query here. Okay, so my third query that I want to solve today is just a minute. Okay, so the third query that I want to solve is fetch the total amount of sales for each artist who has sold at least one painting. Okay, does subquery always start with a select? Yes. What is a subquery? Subquery itself is basically a select statement itself. Only thing is it's a select statement that is written inside another select statement. That's it. Okay. Um, okay. Now, okay. Does it always start with the select? May not be 100% accurate because I can also write a select query with which starts with the with clause, right? So, but I have not come to with clause. I'll come to that next week. Okay. But generally, yes, every subquery needs to have a select statement, and a select statement can start either with a select or it can start with a with clause. Okay. Okay. Fetch the total amount of sales for each artist who has sold at least one painting. So let's try to solve this. Let's try to understand what we need. I need to find a total amount of sales. Okay. So looks like if I write my query, select from where. Okay, I need to use my sales table because I need to find total amount of sales, right? So I need to find total amount of sales. So something like I can tell sum of what was the price, sales price. Okay, so I need to find the total sum of sales price, okay, from the sales table. But I need to find the total amount of sales for each artist who has sold at least one painting. Okay, so I need to find the total sales, but I need to find it for each artist. Okay, so I need to find it for each artist, but I only need to consider those artists who has sold at least one painting, right? So how I can do that is, since I need to find the total sales for at least uh, each artist, okay, so instead of putting any filter condition, I can just do a group, right? So group by artist id, okay, and I can put the same artist id here and I can execute this. Now I'm able to see that this is basically the total sales amount for each artist who has basically sold at least one painting. Okay, how can I tell that he has sold at least one painting? Because I'm taking this artist id from the sales table itself, and the sales is the only table where you come to know that who has basically, which is the artist who has done some sales, right? The only thing that we need to do, additional thing, is I'm displaying the artist id, but it's not meaningful, right? I need to, maybe I should have mentioned that in the query, fetch the total amount of sales for each artist. Okay, display artist name and sales and total sales amount. Okay, so maybe I will add on this additional thing, otherwise it would not make, question would may seem incomplete. Okay, so along with this we need to also display the artist name. Okay, so how can we do that? Now I already have this part of the query where I have got who are the artists who have done the sales and what is the total sales amount. I have got it. Okay, now in order to display the what is that, the artist name, how can I do that? Can I use joins here? Can I join with the sales, so the artist table, to basically print the artist name? Can I do that? Okay, so let's see what happens. Everyone tells we can use joins, so let's see if I use joins, what happens. Okay, so I'll say joins. Okay, and with which table I need to join? With the artist table, right? So artist, what is the table name? Artist. Okay, I'm going to give this alias like a, this will be yes. Okay, and my join condition will be a dot id equal to yes dot artist id. Okay, will this work? Anyone? This is what you meant, right? We can use joins, and then here I need to display the artist name, right? So in my artist table, what do I have? uh, I have first name and last name. So what I can do is, instead of printing the, okay, I can print the artist ID also maybe, but I can also print their name. So I can just tell a dot first name, okay, and a dot last name. Okay, will this work? It won't work. Okay, include these two columns in the group by clause, right? Okay, now will it work? Anyone? Will it work or no? Yes? Sure? No? No? Okay. So let's execute. It does work. Okay. It does work. Okay. But Yeah, but this one I have just used by using joins. The only thing is we have grouped the data based on all of this. In this particular case, it is working. But if we had different type of data where maybe we had duplicate names or yeah, I think in this table the data is pretty small, but in a bigger data set maybe we'll need to do some more changes. Okay, but I have solved this problem using joins, but I can also solve the same problem by using multi row subquery. Okay, so how can I do that? So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to copy the same query here, or maybe I'll put it down. Okay, and I'll remove this joints. I don't want to use the joints. I only want to I only want to use uh, this one. Okay, so I have got all the artists, okay, who have done sales and the total sales they have done. Okay, now I want to print only their artist name. Okay, one other way of doing this is by putting this entire thing into a subquery. Okay, so I can put this entire thing into a subquery, and I'm going to call it like, let's say, my some other table. So I'm just going to call it like, let's say, X. Okay, and here I can just tell select star from artist A, and I'll do a join. And this time, instead of joining with the table, I'll join it with this subquery itself. Okay, so okay. So I have just joined it with this entire query itself, and then I need to specify the join condition. So I'll just tell on x dot artist ID equal to a dot ID, right? And now if I run this, you can see that I'm still getting the same output, but okay, I'll do a dot star. Okay, and I'm still getting the same output. So here you can see that I'm getting ID, and let's say along with this I also want to display the total sales amount, right? So I'll tell x dot, and here I'll tell total amount. Okay, and I'll just print x dot total amount. And if I run this, you can see that I'm getting three artists, Thomas, Kate, and Natalie, and their total amount here. And if I run this joins query, I'm still getting the same output, Kate, Natalie, and Thomas, and basically the same amount as well. Okay, so the both the queries are returning the same data, but the only difference is this first query here we have used one type of subquery. Can you tell me what type of subquery is this? Is it a correlated subquery or is it some other subquery? Correlated? Correlated? Is there anyone who thinks this is not a correlated subquery but some other type of subquery? Okay, Anbar Hasan tells it is a multi-row, multi-column subquery. Multi-row, multi-column subquery. Try to analyze it properly. What type of subquery is it? Because I explained you the three types of subqueries, right? So this particular subquery falls under which category? So does this depend on outer query? Think carefully. If this subquery was dependent on outer query, then I would not be able to execute it, right? But you can see here, if I just select this subquery and execute it, it is working fine. So what it means, this is a standalone query. It's not dependent on any other query. So this is this is not a correlated subquery. It is a multi-row subquery. Okay, multi-row, multi-column subquery. Okay, correlated subquery is when if you had to execute that correlated subquery, it would not work because it has a dependency on outer query. Okay, in this case there is no dependency at all, so this is a multi-row subquery. Okay, and in most cases we always use a multi-row, multi-column subquery in the from clause, in the join condition or in the from clause. Okay, so I hope that is clear. Again, both these solutions are work, but this is a better solution in this particular case. Okay, because we are just using one state, one select, and simple join, right? I hope this is clear. Now, do you have any questions or can I proceed? Or I'll do one thing. I'll take your questions, but before I take your questions, I'll give you one small exercise right now. Okay, I'll give you maybe 3 minutes to solve this problem. So, can anyone solve this problem? Okay, so we have seen three types of subqueries now, right? Can anyone solve this? Fetch the total amount of sales for each artist who has sold either one or two paintings only. Okay, display also the number of paintings sold. Okay, so I'm going to give you 3 minutes or maybe 3 to 5 minutes. I'll see if anyone has any questions. In this time, let's see who is able to solve this problem. Okay. Do you want to see the data in any tables? I will show you the data in the table. So I have sales, right? So I'll show you that. Okay. So try to execute this query. Let's see who can solve it. Can you please explain the last query one more time? The last query. So Rivan, when you say the last query, because we had two queries, right? The join one or the multi-row subquery one? The join one. Okay. So I will explain this for others. Try to solve this particular query. Okay. Now, Rivan, so if you see here, what are we doing? I'm taking the sales table and I'm taking the artist table and I'm doing a join because this is the only column with which I can join. So artist ID, right? Then what I'm doing is in the sales table, when I join it with the artist ID, I will get all the records for those artists who have done some sales, right? And then if I group because some of the artists might have done more sales, right? So some of the artists, maybe their one painting only was sold, or some of the artists, two of the paintings of that artist was sold, some of the artists, three of their paintings might have been sold, right? In that case, when I do a group by the data, okay, their name and their ID, if any artist has sold more than one painting, I will get all of that into one group. Okay, and from that one group, I can do the total, I can sum together all their sale price, right? And that is what I'm doing here. Okay, so this query is just that. So join the two tables based on artist ID, and if there are any artists who has done more than one sale, then I will create one group for each of those artists. Okay, how am I creating a group? Because artist ID, first name, last name, it will be one group for one artist. And if any artist has done multiple sales, I will sum up all their sales amount by using this sum aggregate function, and finally I'm displaying that, right? So if I execute this, you can execute this, you can see that Kate had done whatever number of sales. Okay, if she had done, I will get this one. So if I want to know how many sales she has done, I can just do a count of one here, and you can see that Kate had done two sales. Okay, and the sum of her two sales was 4,800, and Natalie had done three sales, and her sum of three sales was 4,250, and Thomas only sold one particular item or one particular painting, and his sale amount was 300. Okay, so this is what this query means. Okay, I hope that is clear. Let me go back to my sales table and let's go back to this particular query. Now let's see who is able to solve this particular query. Is it necessary to group by the first name and last name while fetching total amount of sales? Now it's not it's not necessary to group by the first name and last name. The only thing is, if I don't group by first name and last name, how do I display this here, right? If I don't group by them, so let's say if I remove this, okay, and if I run this, it's going to throw me an error because I need to use the first name and last name in the group by clause. Otherwise I will not be able to display it here because I want to display the name of the artist, right? So these two columns I need to display, and that is why I'm using it here in the group by. Okay, so I hope that is clear. Now, okay, I think I got one solution from him. So I'm just going to copy his solution and I'll keep it here. Okay. And I'll look into this solution a little later. I will try to give my solution itself. Okay, I'll give you 1 more minute. I'll just take 1 minute break. And is there anyone else who can give me a solution? So I only got one solution so far. Let's see if I can get maybe up to 5 different people who can give me a solution. To make it easier, uh, I'll give you this. I'll just paste this query itself here. I'll give you a hint. You can basically reuse this same query to come up with a solution for this query. Okay. Okay, so J has given a solution, Lay has given a solution, and Adam has given a solution. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these three solutions. So one is from Haim, one is from Lay, one more was from J, right? J, and then we have from Adam, and then we have from Prashant. Okay, and then finally, okay, this is the last one I'll take from Brent. Okay, so now let's see whose solution is correct. Okay, so let's start with Haim's. Before I give my solution, I'll just show you what they have done. So Haim has told, um, so Haim has told he's taking all of this, and you're doing an inner join here with artist. Okay, your join condition is this, and then you are having a group by. Okay, mm, there should be a beautifier here, right? Do you know where is the beautifier in PostgreSQL? Somewhere in the tool, I think we have this query beautifier so that I don't have to do it, it will manually do it. Anyone knows where is? Okay, fine. So I'll go back here. So what has he done? He took from sales, he joined it with artist, that is fine. And then artist ID, first name, last name. And then he put a having count in 1 and 2. Okay. And then you have this sum of sales. Okay, I think this query should work, right? So if I execute, this query is perfectly fine. So that is good, him. So this is a correct solution. Now let's see what Lay has done. So if you look at what Haim has done, right? It's basically the exact same query that I wrote here. The only additional thing was, so I'll copy this same query here. I'll put it here, and if I execute, I'm getting the three records here. But I am now only interested in finding only those artists who sold either one or two paintings. So what I can do is after this group by, I can just tell having count of one between 1 and 2, right? And if I run this, having, okay, so here now if I run this, you can see that I'm getting the two records, and it's exactly the same output that Haim also has got. Okay, so that's correct. Now let's see what Lay has done. Okay, so right join. Why is Lay using right join here? Okay, so and then you're doing a right join with sales table, and then this, then you're doing a having count of this. Okay, this understanding is correct. I'm not just sure why you're using a right join here. And then you're doing your concatenation, then sum of this, then count of painting ID. Okay, everything else is okay. Let's see what you get. So you're still getting two records, but you're getting Kate and Thomas. What did we get here? Was it Kate and Thomas? Okay, we are still getting Kate and Thomas. So you're still getting the right. The output is correct, but I would not recommend doing this because there was no reason to use a right join here. Okay, for this particular data, it works fine. But tomorrow, if the data increases, if the data changes, then there is no guarantee that this query is going to return the correct output. But this data will always return the correct output as per this query. Okay, so you're getting the correct output, but I don't see a reason why you had to use a right join. Okay, but fine. Let's go on to what Jay has done. Uh, so this one and this one. Okay, so you're doing sum of sales, first name, last name. So you're not printing the number of paintings sold. That's one thing that is missed. And you're doing an inner join with this. And okay, fine. And sales, where sales between 1 and 2. Does this work? This should not work, right? So this will not work. And I think Jay, you should know why it will not work. You cannot do sales. You need to do a count of one between this and this, right? So because sales will have some other value, right? When you do sales between 1 and 2, SQL is going to look into your sales table and it's going to see, is there any record where the sales amount is 1 and 2, right? So that's what you're trying to do, and that's why this query will not work of yours. Okay, so this is wrong. Okay, and then let's quickly look at the other three. Okay, Adam, so we have this. So he's fetching artist ID and some of this joined with Okay, so you're using your subquery here, and then you're giving your join condition here. Okay, so artist ID sales group by artist ID having count in 1 comma 2, uh, and then again you're doing a group by. So you're doing group by twice. Does this give you the result? It's giving you the result, but you're not getting the names. And I think, are you getting the correct result? Is it the correct result? Is it 304,800? Okay, you're getting the correct result, but I think uh, you are using group by in both the both subquery and in outer query. I think it is unnecessary. Okay, so unnecessary to use couple of group bys, because these group bys are a little expensive for SQL, because it needs to get the data and then group together all the data, and you're doing it twice. So not the recommended approach, but you're getting the correct output. Okay. um, okay, so let's look at Prashant, what he has done, and join group by this. Okay, so you have artist table, then join with total sales group by artist ID having count between 1 and 2. Okay, I think this is fine, but do you get all the columns that you need? No. Let's execute this. What is the mistake? Artist. Okay, so there is a typo. So this should be artist ID, and artist ID. All the artist ID is wrong. Okay, does this work? Artist ID does not exist. What is your DA table? So this is ID, and let's see if this works. It is working. You're getting the data. Okay, so this is fine. Okay, this looks fine. There was just some typo. And then Brent, the last one. Let's look at what Brent has done. Is there? I'm just seeing if anyone has solved the problem in a different way, because you can of course solve it in so many different ways. Okay, just seeing if there are any other solutions other than what I thought of. Uh, okay, so sales artist group by this count of star in this. Okay, so this should be fine. I think this will work fine. Okay, so that's good. So most of you guys, I think, got it right, and I don't see anyone. Okay, so I think except for J, I think maybe in hurry you forgot that instead of sales you need to use the count of one, but other than that everything else was correct. And everyone else, even though there are certain variations, they used right join, Adam used multiple group by, they're still getting the right output. Okay, so even when you are learning and when you're going to be solving SQL queries, you will of course be coming up with multiple different solutions. Some solutions may be using certain things unnecessarily. Okay, does not mean that it's going to return the wrong output, but you should just know when you should use what. Okay, but that one you will come to know only with practice. The more you practice, the more you'll realize what you need to use, what you should not be using. Okay, etc. So I hope this is clear. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, Akhil, can we do count of one less than or equal to two? Yes, you can do it. It will be the same output. In interviews, they always ask, is this the easiest way to solve this query? Okay, yes, and the answer to that is, generally they will ask you, if you have multiple solutions or if you come up with a solution which is different from what they were thinking, then they might ask which is a better way. Okay, so you need to think, right? If we have so many solutions here. So my solution to this problem was this one. Okay, so it was the same exact query, and I just used the count of one between 1 and 2. Him also has given almost the exact same solution. Only thing, instead of using between, he has used in. Okay, and then Lay used the right join. Okay, then everything else was same. J, okay, this was wrong, but Adam has used multiple group by, and Prashant almost the same thing that I have written, I think. No, no, okay, he used a subquery and a not join condition. And here I think Brent has used almost the same that Ham has used, right? So among all of these queries, so let's try to give a name or whatever. Can you tell me which is the solution as per you is the best solution? So we have how many solutions? So my solution is one. Okay, so I'll say solution from learners. Can you tell me which solution is the best? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. There are 6 different solutions. Whose solution would you say is better? Mine, Haim solution. Okay, mine. Bhavesh, did you give your solution? I didn't see. Okay, so 6. Okay, so to be frank, right, in my opinion, the solution given by Brent and the solution given by him and the solution given by me are all, I would say, would be the better solution in this case. Okay, because they are all using inner joints. Okay, and they are all, this is the most simplest way you can give the solution, and this count of one between or count of one in does not make much difference. Okay, so all the three solutions are fine. The lay solution, only thing is, it's not necessary to use a right join here, and that is why I say it's not wrong, but it's not necessary here. And Adam solution, because he's using multiple group by, it's not required here. Okay, and Prashant solution, because subquery will be, it's better to use joins instead of subquery wherever possible, because subquery you need to execute multiple queries. In this particular data, it does not make a performance difference, but if you're using millions of records in your table, then performance will get impacted. Okay, so only with more experience and by writing more queries you will come to know which solution is better than the other. Okay, so it's very difficult for me to tell that what you have to use and what you not use. I should not be telling that, because you should explore more solutions to a particular problem, only then you will learn. Okay, okay, so I have question number 5. But is there any questions before I go? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll go to the Q&A tab to see if there are any questions. Okay, select from paintings having. Can we write this? Okay, already answered. Already answered Harsha's question. Can't we give Elias name in having clause? We can give. Yesterday we saw, right? You can give it, no problem. Which one is best, subquery or joints? Wherever you can solve a problem using joints, try to use joints. But there are certain cases where you will not be able to solve a problem using joints. You will have to use subquery. Okay, in that case you have to use subquery. Okay, maybe we'll see some examples in the future classes for that. Is it necessary to group by first name, last name? I already answered that question. Select concat of this one, this one, this one. Okay, so I wish we could format the query for the chat. So maybe this is something you can tell to Sorush Lay, that, but because it's a chat window, I'm not sure formatting of a query is really something that they would consider, because this platform is also used by other programming languages or something. I don't know, maybe they can have some window where you can paste code and you can choose which programming language it is. Is it SQL, Java, Python or something, and then the code would get auto formatted. But yeah, something that you can tell to the Lighthall team. Okay, concat in select statement, is there? Concat in select statement, is there in group by? We are using only artist column. I didn't get you. What do you mean? Concat in select statement is there in group by? We are using only artist column. Okay. So I think he's looking at some where someone used concat, right? Okay. So here he's basically, I think, who was that? Shiva. So Shiva is telling we are using concat function here, but we are not using that in group by. Okay, good question. And the reason why we don't need to do that is because concat is a function, right? So it's not an aggregate function. It's some other type of function. It's basically a string function. You can concat multiple strings together. It's not mandatory to use this in the group by clause. Okay, so uh, which column are you using here? So you're using artist id. Where is your artist id here? Okay, you're not using artist id here. Okay, so we are only displaying first name, last name. Okay, so your question is, even without using the first name and last name, this group by worked because we have enclosed this inside the function. Okay, so yes, I think if I had removed this concat, then it would throw an error. And this is one of the things that I think I explained when I explained group by, right? Whenever you are using group by any column, Either you have to use that column here, but it's not mandatory. You can, because group by artist. What is artist? Oh, okay. She's using this. So she's not using artist ID, but she's using the alias. Okay. So I did not look at the query properly, but this is something that we covered yesterday, I think. Whenever you're putting something in the group by clause or in the order by clause, okay, either you can specify the column name itself, that is both these columns, okay, or you can specify the alias that you have given here, okay. In this particular case, so let's see what is this query returning. It's returning 3 columns and 2 records. If I modify this query and write it something like this, so let's say I'm just going to, instead of putting this alias, if I just put first name and last name, I think it's still going to return the same output. Okay, so this is also exactly the same. Okay, because for SQL, it's just going to take the value from these 2 columns. Okay, even though you are having an given an alias name here, it's this query and this query are basically exactly the same. So either you can put the alias name or you can give the exact column name. Okay. Okay, so I think that's all with the questions. I'll move on to the next one. Okay, fine. So let's move on to the next one. Which one? What was this question, query number? So this was 4, is it? Okay, so let's go on to the next one. And let's say I have, the next question is question number 5. And I have a requirement where I need to find the names of the artists who had 0 sales. Okay, so how do I do this? How can I solve this particular problem? So let's see. I need to find artists who had 0 sales. So I need to take my sales table. So I'll go here. And in my sales table, I can see I have artist 2, 1, and 3. But in my artist table, I also have another artist called artist 4, right? Now find the names of the artists who had 0 sales. Okay. So I only need to find those artists who basically did not make any sales. Okay. Now, of course, there are several different ways of solving this problem. One of the way of solving this problem is by using a correlated subquery. And let's see how to do that. So I'll say select from where, okay, and here I need to find the name of the artist who had 0 sales. So I need to display the name of the artist. Looks like the table that I need to use is artist. I'll give an alias here, yeah, and then I only need to consider those artists who did not make any sales. How do I come to know if an artist has made sales or not, right? If an artist has made sales, then he would have an entry in this sales table. If an artist has not made sales, then he would have no entry in this sales table, right? With that understanding, I need to write a query. So what I can do is I can write another query here telling that select artist ID from sales. Okay, if I execute this, this is all the artists who has made some sales, right? So if there is any record in the artist table who does not exist in this list, then those are the artists who did not make any sales. So what I can do is there is a particular operator that I can use, which is called as not exist. Okay, and I'm going to explain that what it does. I can use that, and then I can write this query here. Okay, so but instead of putting the column name, I can just put just one. Okay, and I can give an alias for this, like let's say sales. Okay, and here I can just tell where yes dot artist id equal to a dot id. Okay, and here I can just print star. Okay, and now if I execute this, now you can see I'm getting, this is the only artist who is having the id 4 who did not make any sales. Okay, this is the solution to my problem. But how did this actually work? Let's try to understand this query. Okay, you can see that I have this sales table. So when I execute this inner query, it's not going to work. Okay, why is it not going to work? Because this subquery that I have written here is dependent on the outer query. How do I say it is dependent on the outer query? Because you can see here I have a filter condition where I'm telling yes dot artist id is equal to a dot id. What is this a dot id? This a is basically my outer table, right? So this is what I mean when I say dependent. So the subquery is dependent on the outer query. Okay, and whenever you're writing a query like this is called as a correlated subquery. Okay, correlated, right? Your subquery is related to the outer query. Okay, how is it related? It is related by this particular column, that is id column. Okay, now what am I how am I trying to achieve this solution? Okay, what I'm basically doing is I'm having my artist table here. I'll get all my four artists, but I know that out of this only 1, 2 and 3, the artists with id 1, 2 and 3 are the only three artists who have an entry in the sales table, right? Where is how do I link this sales table with the artist table? I link it with the artist id column, right? So when I join artist with the sales table based on the artist id, only these three records will get matched, right? So this inner query here, or this correlated subquery here, will only return those three matching records. Okay, so the three matching records will get returned from here, and then how am I basically linking the outer query with the subquery is by using this not exist clause. So what this not exist will do is it's going to return any record from the outer query which is not existing in this subquery. Okay, this subquery is going to return me three records because, as I told you, three artists is present in this sales table, right? So my where condition here is only going to return me the records which are not existing in this subquery. So the not existing in this subquery is, so this subquery is going to return these three artists. Okay, so not existing these three is only this one, right? My artist number 4. So when I execute this entire query, it's going to return only my artist number 4. Okay, is it clear now? What is the reason I'm using 1 here, right? Why I didn't use some other column name or star? Actually, I can use it, no problem. The thing is, whenever I'm using not exist, it does not matter what I give here. If I give star and if I execute this, it's going to return the same. Instead of star, let's say if I give some other column name, artist ID, and if I execute it, it's still going to return me the same. What this means is, what you give here does not matter for SQL, because SQL is not going to bother about this. Only thing is, in your select clause, you have to give something, right? If I think generally in most of the database, you have to give something. Let's say in PostgreSQL, it still works, okay? Because in PostgreSQL, if you don't give anything in your select clause, okay, it's going to return blank. You can see here it's returning blank, okay? This only works in PostgreSQL, but in other RDBMS, I think you have to give a column value here, either a hard-coded value or a column name, or you can give star, okay? But I'm just giving one because it's a hard-coded value. SQL does not have to go and fetch the column name. It does not have to bother about the column name, right? So this is how not exist works. Now, I can also rewrite this query in a different way. Instead of using not exist, I can also tell not in. Okay. So in case of not in, I don't need to make it a correlated subquery. Okay. So what I can do is I can just make it something like this. So here I can tell whenever I'm using not in. So you see one more thing, when I'm using not exit on the left hand side, I'm not given any column. You only need to have a value on the right hand side. Okay. But this another operator not in, I need to give a value basically on the left hand side as well as on the right hand side. So on the left hand side, I can tell ID, and here I can tell artist ID. Okay. And if I execute this, I'm still getting the same output. Okay. So both these outputs are correct. Okay. Though now, can you tell me? I'll ask you one question. Can you tell me? I told you this is a correlated subquery, right? What type of subquery is this? Anyone? Okay. To answer the question, which is best? I told you, right? There are certain scenarios where you have to use left join. There are certain you cannot not exist, and left join cannot be compared. Okay, some of the queries might work in either of the ways, but not every query is going to work. For certain queries you have to use left join, certain queries you have to do that by using not exist. Okay, okay, so Sandrine's statement is correct. Outer query is a query that does not exist in the subquery. Yes, that is correct. Okay, can we use not equal to in the on clause? You can use not equal to in the on clause, but not on this particular case. But in general, yes, you can use. Okay, but my question was, what type of subquery is this? Anyone? I did not get any response. So Is anyone clear about what type of subquery is this? Does anyone know? No one? Okay. So no one knows what type of subquery is this, or no answer? Are you guys answering, or am I not able to see your answer? Please check in live chat. Oh, sorry, sorry, sorry. I'm so sorry, man. I was there. Okay, fine. So you guys already answered. Okay, fine. So what have you answered? Column and multi-row, 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 scalar, okay, nested, multi-row. Okay, so most of you said multi-row. So let's execute this, right? What should it return? It's returning multiple rows and one column. So it's a multi-row, right? So here I have I have given the solution using a correlated subquery. Here I have got the same solution using multi-row subquery. Which is better? Okay, but before I explain which is better, I need to tell you how correlated subquery actually executes, right? Because I told you how does a scalar subquery works, or multi-row subquery works. So as soon as you execute a query which contains a scalar subquery or a multi-row subquery, SQL is first going to execute the inner query or the subquery, right? So the inner query will get executed, and the output of that will then be used to filter the outer query, right? But when it comes to correlated subquery, SQL cannot execute the subquery. Why? Because this is not a standalone query. This query depends on the outer query. So what happens is it's basically going to execute the outer query, okay, and it's going to take one record at a time. So it's going to take the first ID, that is a.id, and that a.id it's going to put it into this subquery here or the inner query here, and then it's going to execute the inner query, okay, and then once it gets some result, then it's going to print the entire output, okay, and then it's going to go back to the outer query, take the second record, and from the second record it's going to take the id, and that for that id it's again going to execute the inner query, okay, and then whatever result it gets, it's going to filter the data based on that, then the entire output gets selected, and then it's again going to continue to the third record, and so on and so forth. So what this means is, for every record in your outer query, in this case there are 4 records in your outer query, this subquery will get executed 4 different times, okay. That is the problem of subquery. That is, if you are having thousands of records, for every record in the outer query your subquery gets executed. So in this particular case, this subquery will get executed 4 times because your outer query has 4 records, right? Whereas this subquery that we have written here only gets executed once, okay, because it is a multi-row subquery, okay. So in this particular case, what do you think, which query is better? Right, second query is better, and it is self-explanatory, right? The less work you give to SQL, the better it is. Here we have very less data, but if I was having thousands and millions of records, then you would see clear performance improvement by using this particular query. Okay, but in general, this is what a correlated subquery is. Now, I hope that is clear. We only have 8 minutes left, and I still wanted to cover a few things. So this was number 5. Okay, so I'll now take up the last question for this particular session. Okay, the last question that I want to solve is this particular thing. Can you guys help me to solve this problem? Because now we have seen all the type of subqueries, we have seen group bys, we have seen all the other basic stuffs. Now I'll give you 2 minutes. I want to see who can solve this. Okay, so read the question. So I'll have this here. Okay, so I'm telling, suppose you insert below 2 records to the articles table, write a query to identify duplicate artist. Okay, so I'm going to insert these 2 records. I'm going to say 5 and 6. Okay, just a minute. 5 and 6. Okay, and I'm going to execute these 2 records, and I'm going to query the data from this table now. So select star from this. Okay, so you can see that I have 6 records, and you can see Kate and Natali are repeated, right? So Kate and Natali are having basically, they are duplicated, right? Because I inserted duplicate records here. Now I want you to write a query to identify the duplicate artist. Okay, can anyone write a query to identify the duplicate artist? Okay, so I'll give you 1 minute or 2 minutes to write the query. If anyone is not able to write the query, let me know what is the um, concept that we can use to find the duplicate records. Okay, I will come to that answers now. Shantanu tells we can use union. In this case, yes, you can get the solution using union, but there can be a better way. Count greater than 1. How about Kate Bush? Where is Kate Bush? If you have Kate Bush, then basically the combination, the artist might be different, right? They would not be duplicate. In this case, let's consider when I say duplicate, it's duplicate for the entire name. First name and last name both are same. If there was another record with Kate Bush, then it is not duplicate. Okay. Okay, so Nandini has given a query, and before that, I see uh, Adil Fita also has given a query, and Murali also has given a query. Okay, so I'll not take your query. Maybe I'll try to solve it myself. So I need to write a query to identify the duplicate records. So I'm just going to say select from where. Okay, and I know that I need to use only the artist table. Okay, and I need to find the duplicate records. And it was a good point by Tim. What if the last name was different? If the last name was different, then we'll not treat them as duplicate. If both the names are same, only then we'll treat them like duplicate. Okay, so I can say that Kate Smith is present twice, Natalie Wayne is also present twice, right? If I have to find duplicates, what I can do is, one way is I can basically write distinct. Okay, so let's say if I say distinct of first name comma last name, okay, from artist, then I will get the distinct artist. Okay, but I don't want this. What I want is I want to identify the duplicate records. I want to only display those people who are duplicated. So I only want to display Kate and Natalie, not everyone, right? So this distinct is not going to work. What other way can I do that? So one more way of doing that is by saying group by this first name and last name. Okay, so if I run this again, you can see I'm getting the same output, but this is where group by is different from distinct, right? In distinct, it would only return me all the unique values. Group by is also doing that, but in addition to this, I can do a lot more operations for each of these groups, right? One of the other operations that I can do is I can use a aggregate function count of 1, right? And I can execute, and now you can see that it's telling Kate Smith is present, it's having 2 records, Natalie Van is having 2 records, right? Now I am only interested in the people who are having multiple records, right? Because the duplicate records. So what I can do is, in order to filter the grouped data, I can use a count of 1 here, and I can say count of 1 is greater than 1, right? And now if I execute this, I will get only Kate Smith and Natalie Wen. Okay, so this is how you can identify duplicate records in your uh, you can identify duplicate records in your table. Okay, now I'm going to end the class here, but I'll give you one assignment. Okay, very interesting assignment, and my assignment is this particular thing. I'll give you 2 assignments. Okay, so we have created these duplicate records, right? So I'll tell you assignments, and then I will look at the solution for the last previous class assignment. Okay, so my first question for assignment is this one, that is, how would you delete the duplicate records in the artist table? So we have written a query to identify the duplicate records. Now I want you to give me a delete statement where you will delete the duplicate records, only delete the duplicate records. Okay, delete. So once you run this delete duplicate records, these 2 additional records should get deleted, and only the 4 unique artists should be present. Okay, how would you do that? Okay, that is your first assignment, and the second assignment is this one. Okay, the query number 8 assign. Okay, so I'll do this. For each collector, calculate the number of paintings purchased. Okay, so these 2 are the assignments for today. Try to do that. Okay, I'm going to first copy this entire note and put it into the notes file. Just a minute. Okay, just give me a minute. I okay, so I need to copy all of this and paste it here. And okay, so this is session 9, right? So I have all the notes for session 9. So that is fine. And then I have given you the assignment. Now I'll just go back to sessions 8. Session 8, I had given assignment 6, 7, 8, 9, right? So let me share the solution for this. Um, where is the solution for this? Just a minute. So this is, what was this? This is joints, right? Okay. So joints and okay, so I have it here. Okay, just a minute. So session 8, find the countries which has purchased more than 10 motor vehicles. Find the countries which has more than 10 motor vehicles. Okay, fine. So I will take, so I'm going to paste this solution in the in the notes of today's class. Okay, so I'll do one thing. Mm, at the very beginning itself, right? I'll say this was the assignment, assignments, and solution from session 8. Okay, and I'll give you the solution for that here, and then I'll explain you. Just give me a minute. So I have the solution here. This is for question 6. Okay, just you can have a look at the solution till I copy the solution for the other 3. So I have, so find the sales amount which is incorrect, right? So this is that, and then total sales amount for each day, right? And then the last one was, here I'll tell session 9 starts here. Okay. Uh, okay, so first of all, let me copy this, put it into session 9 notes. Okay, so I'm done. I think the time is up. I'm just going to take 5 more minutes to explain these solutions. Okay, so these were the 4 assignments that I had given in the last class. This question, right, which Lucky is asking, I think this question or request has been asked, I would say, numerous number of times, and I don't know what I need to do that everyone needs to understand that every script, every query, every data set, everything that you see here, I will share it in 2 places. I'll share it in Telegram and I will share it in Lighthall. After every session, I do that. Okay, and I get this question after every session. Why are you not sharing it in Lighthall? Can you share it in Lighthall? So, and I answer it every single time, and no problem. But maybe you just joined the class now, but I get this question every single session. So I think there needs to be some frequent FAQs that I need to come up with. So the frequently asked questions can be answered straight away. So because it's a course, everything I have to share it with you. Otherwise, what is the purpose of this course, right? If I don't give you the scripts and data sets and all the files, right? I will give it to you. I will upload everything in Lighthall and Telegram. Okay, now let's look at this question. Um, find the countries which have purchased more than 10 motor vehicles, right? So, okay, this was from a different data set, right? I think for this we used, which was a data set that we used? This was a sales order data set. Okay, this is the notes, right? I'll put it here. Okay, and has everyone tried to solve this? Um, did everyone try to solve it? Did everyone? Is there anyone who used this same similar query to solve this? Okay, we can to solve. Yes, same. Okay. Is there anyone who solved it differently from what you see here? Same. Okay. So I think probably you would have done it same. The only thing is here I'm joining multiple tables. I'm joining three tables. I'm adding all the filters. I'm having a group by having a count. So looks like I'm basically using every feature except for limit. I'm thinking I'm using everything else here, right? In this query. Okay. Okay. I'll not explain this query here because they are pretty similar to the ones that we already worked out. I'm going to share this solution with you in the notes file today. Go through this solution. If there is anyone who did not understand the solution, then you ask me a question either in Telegram or in the next class. Okay. And then I'll try to explain that. Okay. Um, is that okay for everyone? Because we're already time is up. If I start explaining again, I will need half an hour. And so I hope it is okay. This can be solved with subquery. Yes, yes, you can solve it using subquery as well. Most of the query that you use with joins, you can use with subquery as well. But if you can solve it by using simple inner join, then it's better you use inner join. Okay. Okay, so the next class is next week. So from next week, it's again the normal schedule. For Indians, it is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. For people in North America, it is going to be Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in the evenings. Okay. So, and I know there are people from other places as well. I'm sorry if I don't remember which country you guys are from, but I hope um, you can understand when I say US and India, because most of the people are from US and India, I think. Okay. Okay. So from next week, the schedule is the same. Every 3 days, 3 continuous days in the week. So either Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for Indians, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday for Americans. Okay. How to know whether to solve a query by joins or subquery? It's like there is no right way of telling that. Okay. Now I solved some of the queries using subquery and joins. I can also solve the same query by using union operator. Okay. So you need to know how to solve it in multiple ways. That is the very good way of learning things. Solve a problem, then solve the same problem using a different approach. Okay. Then you see which approach you like better. Okay. So in most cases, joins is better, okay, because it is slightly faster, but in certain cases you will not be able to solve a query using joins. Okay. So there is no right or wrong in this particular case, but you should just know all the different ways to solve a problem. Don't just stick to solve a problem always by using subquery. Don't just stick to solving a problem always by using joins. Explore all the options. Okay. Because only then you will know all the different concepts. Okay. Okay, fine. So that's all for today. Thank you very much. I hope you like the class, and we will meet again next week. Okay. So for next week, mm, I'm going to be starting with joints. Okay, all the different type of joints. We'll cover CTE, that is with clause, and I'm going to be solving more intermediate or complex SQL queries. Okay, not very complex, but slightly more intermediate to complex SQL queries. Okay, from next week. So that's all, everyone. So I hope this recording has recorded everything, and I'm going to stop.